Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldai, your host, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting, and publisher at Autonomy Global. Can you believe we are a couple weeks into January already, 2026? We've dedicated this month to the theme of 2026 Look Ahead. It's sponsored by Carousel, so we appreciate them. And we have this amazing company with us here today. Yaron Rosen is the CEO of Airwayz. It is
Chairman.
sorry.
Chairman.
Oh, very good. So German. So for some reason I thought,
Chairman, the
oh,
executive
you're the
chairman of Airwayz.
chairman. Okay, I'm sorry. I think my script was a little bit off there. So he's the chairman of Airwayz and Israeli-based company. I'm getting that right. Okay,
Yes.
excellent. And we are really excited because when you look ahead to 2026 globally, one of the biggest things happening in the drone world is beyond visual line of sight operations are increasing on a daily basis. The regulatory schemes are starting to finally fall into place. Things that used to be demos are now operational evaluations. And Airwayz is at the tip of the spear here because they're providing the technology that feeds the system through UAS traffic management. So it's so great to have you on the show. You're on.
Thank you so much. Great being here, Don.
Absolutely. So, look, before we get started talking about Airwayz and your role there, why don't you tell us a little bit about your personal background first?
Most of my adult life, I've been in the airspace. Air Force guy, served for over 32 years. Um, Flew a couple of interesting aircrafts and helicopters. And towards the end of my service, I somehow, at the staff level, I transitioned into cyber in a very interesting transition and did that for 2 years. Ended up being the chief of the IDF cyber staff after being a division, joint operations division commander in the Air Force. And then I did the best transition ever into entrepreneurship, which I dreamt about for about 2 decades. And finally did that, went into the startup world, founded two startups in the cyberspace, then was recruited into fintech, and then um, transitioned now into doing investments with Andreessen Horowitz as a scout, and also venture building with startups, exciting startups that I fall in love with, such as Airwayz.
That is awesome. What a great background. What I love about military service, doesn't matter, is US, Israel, pick a country. Uh, they just throw you into areas that are maybe are not something you ever thought you would do. And then sometimes it winds up becoming, just a passion. I know for me, that happened with drone policy. That was not something that I thought I would ever be doing. I was in the courtroom quite a bit as a JAG in the United States Air Force, and I love that. And then over time with these leadership positions, you never know what they're going to make you do, and who knows what comes out of it. But I love that you, through your journey in all of these different areas, found a thread and a passion also for entrepreneurship. So tell me a little bit about that connection to Airwayz. Like, in other words, how did you find your way finally into that entrepreneurship realm that you had been thinking about for so long?
Well, entrepreneurship, actually, in the Air Force and during my service, I found that after the fact, like today, I understand how much entrepreneurship there is in military service, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's both the pace and the transition, the commitment that is needed from the people who serve their nations, and the missions you have to execute in order to achieve life and death missions. And so that's sort of the state of mind. Now, actually, when I transitioned, it's funny because you're used to doing things that are life and death, and then you have to sort of get used to doing and getting excited from things that are not life and death,
That's true.
which it's supposed to be easy, but for a reason, for some, in a strange way, in the beginning, you have to actually get used to it. So I found that pretty interesting. Like, how do you motivate yourself when things are just money or
Right.
just building a product? So at the end of the day, it's actually quite the same. You have to find like what's the mission? Who do you want to serve? What are the goals? How do you tell the story, the storytelling, the whole thing? So and then actually it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's
I agree, and I feel like a lot of the skills that you kind of build and grow over time through service, they translate directly into entrepreneurship. Now, for your journey from defense and cyber, you landed in airspace autonomy. So tell me a little bit about that story. Like, what was the arc there?
Yeah, as an airman, you fly all your life in airspace, and you're used to something which is the static airspaces. You have routes, heights, things you have to do. You have to be at this level and report here and report there. There's this thing, right? It's a very rigid type of flying.
Yeah.
Maybe the only place where you're not rigid is inside a battle space. You do what
Yeah.
you have to do, right?
Dogfights. Yeah.
Yeah, everything. Do
Yeah.
whatever you need. But now what happened is quite interesting because when you connect the static airspace to the ground, like when airplanes are flying down to their airports and all these things, you suddenly start seeing the complexity of the low altitude airspace. And specifically in the last decade, what we're seeing is how gradually and suddenly in the last 2 to 4 years, with all the arenas, the battle grounds globally, and the evolution of drones specifically, we're seeing how we practically lost control of low altitude airspace. We lost control.
Yeah.
And that's where everything converges. Like you suddenly understand that everything is connected and something really, really has to change, not because we failed technologically, because the nature of airspace and the threats has changed in a very interesting way, in a very asymmetrical way.
Yeah, 100%. Most people don't. I think increasingly people see the dual use aspect of what, for example, your company does with UTM, really with drones in general. I think that's become more and more apparent over time. But you're absolutely right. This idea of managing that low level airspace is a challenge, not just on the civilian side for people wanting to do drone deliveries, as an example, or on the commercial side, but obviously on the military side as well. I mean, in the US at least, I think it was the first time in 40 years that we had a casualty on the ground inflicted from the air with Jordan Tower 22. And look, people can talk about counter drone all day long, but it's all about airspace management. It's about having that situational awareness of who's doing what in your area. And, so all of that translates. And, I know this, Yaron, but, at some point it became clear to you and, to others that the real challenge really isn't about the drone. It's not about the drone technology, but the airspace shared as that operational system. Tell me a little bit about that aha moment and, what you guys are doing about it.
It's a funny story because when I started working on airspace with Airwayz, it actually hit me after we did a lot of thinking about where we're going, and it hit me how similar the challenges between cyberspace and airspace. And that moment was a very interesting moment because I suddenly understood the parallels, and how we should tackle the problem of infrastructure in airspace. And the reason I'm saying is because today, low altitude is the most contested, least governed and least scalable layer of the sky.
Yes.
Okay. And everything else is sort of has a it sort of has an infrastructure, but it's an infrastructure that was built 50 years ago and
Yeah.
more, right? So the rules and the DNA of airspace, the static high altitude airspace where Boeing and Airbuses fly, were planned in a completely different era. And today, when you have all these the manufacturing that democratized sort of flying objects, right? Like
Yep.
anyone can fly an object for fun or for bad reasons,
Yes.
whatever you want. It's accessible, it's mass produced. That's the first thing. The second thing is that autonomy of these things, it blurred the civil and defense airspace. The
Yes.
same drone can be a toy, can be a sensor, can be a weapon, it can be an ISR mission. You see what's going on in Europe and the US, all these sightings of drones by God knows what.
Right.
Suddenly context decides, not the hardware. And then you
Yeah.
have the airspace control model that was built 50 years ago. All these things with humans in the loop, tower centrics, air control, ATC, that is that was built for sparse, fast, manned aircraft, not
Yeah.
for not for drones, not for things that fly by themselves or by remote flying robots, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And so the low altitude sort of breaks everything, right?
Yeah.
Small objects, high density, low speed, or today we have actually high speed. You got drones flying 650 kilometers an hour, which is crazy.
Yeah.
You got massive clutter for sensors, and it's just too many decisions for anyone needing to just fly for commercial reasons
Yes.
or for security reasons.
Yeah.
So all that is really poof. And that's the moment when I completely, the aha moment when I
Yeah.
saw the exact parallel into cyberspace, because that's exactly the feeling I had when I was going into cyber in 2014, when the US Cyber Command was 4 years old. It was a baby, maybe crawling, right?
Yes.
So back in 2014, that's what we spoke about. Who's responsible for what? The blurry lines between civil and defense. How are we going to protect in very complex digital space? Who all these things exactly the same.
Yeah, the ubiquitous nature, attribution concerns, all of these
Attribute.
things, and
Yeah.
it's so interesting, you're on to me, because I mean, at the end of the day, drones are flying computers. Really, that's what they are, right? And at least in the United States, and I think I can speak globally at this point, most people just more recently have had that aha moment, right? Like because um, with all the challenges we're seeing globally, but the vulnerabilities of these systems, the ability to orchestrate them, I think is a term that Airwayz uses quite a bit, is absolutely necessary. And with at least some of the big events coming up in the U.S., whether it's the FIFA World Cup, the Olympics. We're going to have those in Milan here shortly in February, but also in LA in 2028. Our 250th birthday. So many things coming up. People are now like infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. So let me ask you this: when you have multiple, let's just say, legitimate and illegitimate actors operating all at the same time, which is kind of the new normal almost globally, what, in your opinion, fundamentally breaks first in low altitude airspace?
The biggest thing is, again, the loss of control. Okay. When
Yeah.
you have this mixed airspace, and you can understand, I think everyone can understand this very easily from a spam email, right?
Yeah.
Like everything looks legitimate. So how do you differentiate? And everything else you mentioned before, how do you decide? Who decides? In what space? Who owns the sky above
Yeah,
anything? We're used to giving ownership to a sky over an airport and in the high altitude. But in between, people just fly from A to B.
right,
So how do you organize now? Suddenly, you have this massive scaling of airspaces, and you have the tools from 5, 6, 7 decades ago on how to define airspaces. It doesn't work.
right.
You need to build the infrastructure that will define how everything is built, the routes. It has to be dynamic. It cannot be static.
Right.
It has to be much more efficient. It has to utilize and integrate sensors and effectors.
Yes.
It has to control the skies. Okay, you fly from here to there. Oh, but suddenly there's manned aircraft. So you go here and you go there. So
Right.
there's planning and there's real time. You have to be able to simulate. You have to be able to do all these things. And it's really not easy if you don't have the infrastructure, if you don't have the ability to scale, if you don't have the ability to have decisioning support, everything together in order
Yes.
to deliver whatever outcome you want, which is always both commercial and security. There isn't a world exactly like in cyberspace. There
Yep.
is the world of we're only flying aircraft for fun. That ended in 9/11. I think everyone understood that.
Yeah.
But now we have little 9/11s flying around, might have little 9/11s. So we cannot ignore it exactly like in cyberspace. So we need to
Yeah.
build an infrastructure that acknowledges this mixed airspace
Yes.
from the beginning to the end.
You're preaching to the choir, my friend, because I've been saying for years that counter UAS is the yin to the yang. There's counter UAS companies, for example, that stop going to quote unquote drone events because they're like, that's not our jam. This is not our crowd. But like, you know what? Yes, it is because they cannot fly without you. And likewise, you don't exist without them. So, this symbiosis, I'll call it, in the industry between everything happening in the air, the need to fly, whatever mission you're on, and the need to protect that mission. You're absolutely 100% right. You cannot separate those things. And you created a UTM that's dynamic. By the way, you use the word dynamic, and I think that's really important too because, as you said, this is not a static A to B anymore. That's not what we're talking about. And then you throw in the pop up things like an emergency response vehicle that was never planned, that all of a sudden now needs the right of way. And how do you strategically deconflict all these things? Right. So, this is a very complex world that you entered into, Yaron, when you decided with Airwayz, like, we're going to create this system. So I think we got a really cool video. I'd love to roll that and have you kind of talk us through what we're seeing in terms of your dynamic UTM version. So I
Okay.
think we're going to roll that now. Here we go. So talk
Yeah,
away.
just as an overview, the system is infrastructure, the system is command and control, the system is automated decisioning, and the system is supervised autonomy. And what we're seeing is what is most important in the day and age that we live in, that everything is very, very intuitive and in the same language that we're used to sort of doing everything we do today, right? Whether if it's planning with and getting assisted by an agent that will ask you in plain English language back and forth, what do you want to do? Like we don't want to plan in the way that we used to plan. We want someone to help us. So the helper is there from the beginning all the way to the end, from the planning all the way to the debriefing, like we're used to doing in the Air Force, right? So
Yeah.
so the AI, okay, the AI is there from the beginning to the end. That's the first thing. But the infrastructure is what's important. The infrastructure is all the rules and all the regulations and all the policies and everything that you define as infrastructure is built in, and it's built in a way that can be adapted by regulators. So even regulator speed needs to be faster. And
Yes.
by the way, the data, so Airwayz, because it's the infrastructure, it's the data historian, right? Like
Yes.
we are the source of truth of what's going on in the sky. Now, if I'm a regulator and I want to know I regulated something and the rule was there, is there now, and it's been going on for 6 months. Let's just say that nothing happened. Nothing happened. What do I understand as a regulator? It's either my regulation is stopping or preventing commercial development, or maybe people are not understanding the regulation, or the regulation should be changed, or that airspace isn't useful, whatever.
Yeah.
So even for that, even for testing sensors and effectors, you need a data historian. So the infrastructure is a very important part of it. Command and control. We are not in the day and age that, Houston, we have a problem. We don't need these rooms with hundreds of tied, sitting very tight people with ties and suits. No
Yes.
more. I mean, I think Elon Musk proved that already with SpaceX. And if I am the port of Rotterdam, which is our customer,
Yeah.
think about this for a second. I mean, I find that quite amazing every day. The port of
Yes.
Rotterdam is one of the busiest airports, not ports, not only ports.
Right.
And how is he able to do that? How is he able to own his sky? He's able to do that because he has the infrastructure, the intuitive command and control, the decisioning support, and the supervised autonomy. And that's what we need today. We need the flexibility to give anyone that needs to utilize his sky or protect himself, whatever asset, a nuclear facility, a base, a military base, the Capitol Hill,
Yes.
whatever we want, we need to give them the ability to manage, control, and secure their skies. How do you do that? You have to use all this stack
Yes.
from infrastructure, command control, decisioning, and autonomy.
I love all that. It's so funny you mentioned the Port of Rotterdam because, and I didn't realize that you were a client, by the way, you're on. I know you're very active. There's a port in Israel we're going to talk about here shortly. Um, but I was just at GeoBiz 2026 last week in Denver, and I was on a little panel about airports and ports, and I talked about Rotterdam because, like, you're exactly right. It's when you think about ports, they're mini cities, almost like a military base. You know, so much going on there, and then now you've got this offshore kind of airspace, connectivity, so many things happening in that space. But I think I want to transition to talk about some of the things you've been doing in the real world. So it's one thing to have a concept, it's one thing to create a product, it's another thing, right, to go from testing to reality. And you've been doing and facilitating beyond visual line of sight operations in Israel for a while, and learning things in the real world that a test site could not just teach you. So tell us a little bit about some of the real world examples. I think we've got a cool image here with some of the articles recently that about Airwayz and some of the things you've done, and tell us some of the things you've learned along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting. This picture, it's about the INDI 3. It's the third chapter of Israel's national drone initiative led by the Innovation Authority. And we are sort of the infrastructure of this initiative. And what it's doing is actually applying the theory that we spoke about into real life of cities in Israel. And specifically now, the Indy 3 just started 3 weeks ago. And basically, this is the commercial uh, chapter. And what we're doing in this chapter is basically operationalizing and commercializing the airspace above municipalities. So in the center of Israel, there is an area of municipalities, and we're embedding businesses that want to do deliveries, BVLOS flights, whether it's food or other things, whether it's security, police, or things like that. And
Yep.
basically, we're providing them with the infrastructure, with the automated decisioning that allows them to scale operations, just as the Port of Rotterdam, when we started with them, had four vendors, drone vendors working in port. And
Yep.
today they have over 72. Uh,
Wow. And how many years did it take to go from 4 to 72?
the, just 2 years.
2 years. That's unbelievable.
And the numbers are unbelievable as well because they are saving a lot of money thanks to drone operations. That is for inspections inside the port, all the cranes and whatnot, the ships. So many vendors are now coming into this business of utilizing drones for um, port shore deliveries, all these bio specimens, I think you say, whatever you call them, you have to provide before you come into the port and all
Oh,
these other
yeah.
things.
I never thought about that, but yeah.
And usually it was done with boats, but now you do it with drones. It's faster, it's much, much cheaper, and the port has been saving almost $450,000 a day,
A
a day,
day?
a day.
What?
Yes, it's huge.
That
It's huge.
that is amazing. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. I hope this kind of information gets out to the general public. I always talk about this, Yaron. Like a lot of times it's like FUBU, for us, by us. People that watch this show are oftentimes people that are in the industry. Getting someone like my mom or like my neighbor to watch this and understand the amazing things drones are doing every day. Like they just don't know. So let's stick with this topic of ports, because the port of Ashdod is also another space where Airwayz is making a big difference in terms of command and control. Tell us about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so the Port of Ashdod actually is a very, very great partner of Airways, and we have been developing with them in parallel of what we have been doing in the Port of Rotterdam. We've been developing what does a port do with a system like Airwayz, and
Right.
it started from commercialization, exactly the story I told a minute ago about Port of Rotterdam. So all the operations for shipping. Okay,
Right.
that's one chapter. But then you have many other aspects of running a port. So you have security operations, right? You
Right.
have the security officer of the port. It's a huge operation for him.
Oh,
So how
absolutely. And by the way,
many?
I'm going to interrupt you because we do have a video, and I don't know if it would be a good time to roll that now, and then you can kind of talk over it in terms of some of these missions.
Mhm.
Would that be a good
So
idea?
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, let's go ahead and roll film.
Yeah, so you can see, the port is again so many missions that the port has to execute. Whether it's inspections, and you see here, between the cranes and the ship, and you have to move left and right, and all these things that are done for shipping. And all these vendors are working around a specific area. So one vendor is working there, and the other one's working there, and these are our partners. You just saw inside the port, and all these partners are now able to scale their missions without worrying from each other, okay, or from a helicopter that needs to land somewhere in that port, sorry, in the middle of their operation. So
Right.
everything is embedded in a way which is sort of very, very intuitive for the operators and the vendors. So it's not only good for the port, it's good for the vendors that are developing their businesses. There are also, those companies that do security drone in a box. You know those guys? You see
Yeah, we
this
just
here.
saw an example of that here. Yep.
Yeah, and that's exactly the example you just saw. You saw this person walking around the gate or the fence of the port, and he's unauthorized. So
Yep.
the drone comes out of the box, goes straight to that person. It saves time. It's quick. The cameras today on the drones are quite amazing. You can
Yes.
understand who he is. You can, intercept. You can send the people to the right place without risking their lives, provide them with a real-time picture, and everything needed for command and control of security operations. And right
Yeah.
here, you see the inspection of a crane. You see exactly that this company is doing inspections for cranes with various sensors, radars and all these really interesting things that are developing every day in super interesting companies. Um, you
And I
you just
saw
saw
some
that person.
deliveries there. Yeah, here's
Yeah,
a gentleman opening the box, putting
yeah. Those are
something
the
together.
specimens from the ship.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they're bringing the papers, the oil, the last time they inspected their hull, all these things for them it is very important. And you also saw these sensors. Okay,
Yes.
these sensors are super important for the situational awareness and how the port manages its airspace. So imagine that you have about 72 vendors.
Right.
How are you going to understand who's where and who's doing what and when, and flight planning and flight approvals and all these things? You need
Right.
infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
That's Airwayz. We are the infrastructure. We do the authorization all the way to controlling, all the way to security, integration, and execution of the security plan.
Amazing. And I know we're not going to drill down into the all the five W's of how all of this works, but I did see a drone dog, the quadruped UGV walking around in that video. So I do have one question about that. Your Airwayz, you're doing the airspace approval, the airspace deconfliction. Are you integrating data also from ground vehicles for that kind of complete port picture? Or did the drone just imagery just happen to catch the drone dog down there walking around?
So that's a great question. One of the things that we're developing now is how Airwayz will be everything from the ground up,
Yeah.
because we understand that the mission is on the ground.
Well, it
Okay. The
starts on
air
the ground, right? It lands back on the ground. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you think about a tournament, right? Like one of the FIFA games or the
Sure.
Olympics, the mission is on the ground.
Yes.
The drones and aircrafts and the airspace is used as as an infrastructure for TV, for police, for all these missions, security missions
Yep.
that are needed, because you can't do it only from the ground. So you're using the airspace,
Yep.
but the mission is on the ground.
Yep.
So what we're doing right now, we're allowing the sensors, effectors, all these things. We understand the geographic information, the GIS
Yes.
level of things. So the world is not flat in Airwayz. The world is three-dimensional. So where we position the sensor and effector in the planning, in the assisted planning, AI assisted planning
Yep.
process takes into consideration the three-dimensional world. What we want to integrate at the end is also ground security systems that will be in the near future, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so everything is integrated. We want to be able to integrate the whole thing.
I love that. This is 2026 look ahead, so I'm going to ask that question in a second. But as we look back on 2025, which seems like a million years away previously, right? But it's like just a couple weeks ago, we are still in December of 2025. As you look back, what do you feel changed that made larger deployments possible? Like some of this kind of 72 vendor type deployment in Rotterdam as one example of many.
No question about that. I think all of us understand that through the versions of ChatGPT or Grok or whatever you're using. The large language models are allowing us to scale everything. And this has helped multiple companies globally to advance their missions, the quality of their products, everything. And right now in airspace control, what we call dynamic airspace control, it's allowed us to uh, introduce dynamic airspace control because it's possible today. And
Yeah,
in my view, 5 years from now, I think most of airspace and will be dynamic airspace. I don't see a reason for towers to exist only for ground operations in airports maybe, and maybe other supervised autonomy things because of, again, regulations and people feeling safer if people are in the loop. Great, I think that's the right thing to do, but
yeah,
most of the airspace itself will be run by supervised autonomy of some sort in the very, very near future. I think we're in the midst of this revolution
yeah,
of autonomy that has helped us unify the sky and be able to utilize it in a much, much more efficient way, especially because of the mixed airspace and security and regular operations that need to coexist. That's the biggest thing.
yeah, absolutely. I was just at CES 2026 a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas, and I think they said there were over 3,000 AI companies there. And physical AI, it's something everybody's talking about, right? I went to the Lenovo keynote in the Sphere, and they're building what they're calling a super AI that hoovers in, the public AI, personal AI, which they released a thing called Kira, Qira, to collect your own personal data from a whole bunch of different sources, and enterprise AI. So, I mean, this is the world we're living in. This isn't, fantasy land. This is actually happening. People are walking around with their, they call them their medallions that collect all this data about everything you say and do in your environment. I don't know how I feel about that, but I do agree that autonomy is powered by AI. And as AI continues to advance, we're going to see more and more of this going forward. So let's pull back from 5 years from now and let's talk about this year. Yaron, what should we watch for in 2026 when it comes to Airwayz?
First of all, and I hope we will be in the United States building the infrastructure of the games, the Olympics to be building the UTM spaces, the logistics around the logistics hubs all across the United States, whether it's the land-based logistics hubs in the Midwest, sort of the big, companies that do the DHSs of the world and all these and such, and also developing the businesses and enabling um, to unlock the commercial sort of potential of the airspaces above cities for vendors that want to utilize this airspace to develop their cities. We're involved in Space Florida, which is one of the most interesting. It's an interesting BVLOS. It's a BVLOS route between Florida and New York. of robots that will fly, robot airplanes that will fly back and forth on the East Coast. Think about that.
Yeah, New York and Florida.
Yes, it's pretty far away, right?
Yeah, that's quite a distance.
Yeah. So imagine that there are, there's a route that goes there and there are landings there. And along the way, these airplanes, these robots, these flying robots just do things for whatever you need. So there are less trucks on the roads and, less people need to worry about human error because of whatever you're doing in the air because people make mistakes. That's how it is. Um, and the thing just allows you to develop so many new ventures and businesses. It's the only infrastructure that we can grow into. So if cities grow into the skyscraper uh, three-dimensional world, these are the new Airwayz will allow, hopefully in 2026 and 7, allow all US based all US cities to develop the new infrastructure of their skies to develop the businesses and the commercial potential and unlock the commercial potential that the skies are waiting for to
Well,
be
yeah,
yeah.
to come their way. I mean, I think it's awesome. I was just in November at the Tennessee Drone and AAM Symposium, and a whole bunch of different states, Department of Transportation showed up there, but not just the DOTs, right? It's the other planning groups that are part at that level. And, there are definitely, I'll call them pockets of excellence across the United States where states have kind of woken up to this idea of, and outside of FIFA, like outside of the current, like we got to get this going now, um, just realizing like this is going to help our communities. And so it's really cool to watch this all grow, not just in the United States, but globally. And clearly, you guys have been a big part of that in Europe, in Israel, and now the United States. So we're excited to talk to you today, Yaron, and like learn a little bit more about Airwayz and kind of that origin story, how far you've come in such a short period of time, and all the exciting things that you have kind of on the whiteboard for this year and the following. So I knew our time would fly, and we only have a couple minutes left. So I want to make sure that you have an opportunity. If there's something we didn't cover, something you wanted to say, now's your chance kind of for concluding remarks. And definitely let people know how they can learn more about Airwayz and how they can reach you.
Sure, thank you. Time does fly, literally.
Yes.
Uh, and I think that, Airwayz at the end of the day, what we want to enable is for anyone to be able to control, secure, and defend their skies for any mission. Whatever you're doing out there, whether you're a business, whether you're a stadium, whether you are a base, anyone should be able in the new day and age that we live in, anyone should be able to do that. Not only airports, not only militaries, not only nation states should have the capacity, the capabilities to own and control their skies. And that's what we're here for. We're here to do it. And as I say, when we meet people, and vendors, I always say we're friends of everyone. We're the infrastructure. We
Right.
love you all. We just want to connect to all of you. Just bring us your APIs and we'll help you, anyone we partner with will help you provide a better service for your customers wherever you are, whether you're a mayor, whether you're going to a mayor, whether you're going to a logistics hub or whatever. We just love working in the skies and making the skies a better, safer, and more efficient and commercially viable space.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much. And I love how from day one, with your background and that kind of cyber aha moment, when you thought of UTM, you thought holistically yin yang, you know, operations and protection all at the same time. I feel like that kind of put you light years ahead of so many other folks that said we're just going to orchestrate stuff. Well, you can't just orchestrate stuff. You need to know what else is out there and what you can do about it. So good on you. We're excited to watch you guys continue to grow and expand. Stay in touch, and everybody get in touch with Yaron and his team if you want to learn more. Hopefully, we'll see you across the United States at some point this year, like we talked about before the show started. And really, that's all she wrote. Real quick, how do they reach you?
First of all, we're going to be in the Manifest conference in Las Vegas.
Oh,
Logistics. We're going to be
interesting.
there. So
Okay.
come and meet us. That's the first thing. And you guys can reach us, just Google Airwayz and you'll find us pretty fast, and just reach out. I'm sure, and you can reach me on LinkedIn or wherever you find me easily these days.
Awesome.
And thank you, Don. Thank you so much for a wonderful discussion
Oh, yeah, it was super fun. All
and
right,
for everything you're
everybody.
doing.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so blessed because I get to talk to cool people like you about all the amazing things you're doing. So this is why my life is so fun. All right, everybody. We are out here. See you next week.